as the theme, first of all, thank you for the organizers. It's a pleasure to be here. Uh, I will also be talking about beliefs from a very different point of view, but very interesting talk by Jer just now. I really like it. Anyway, uh, thank you for all for coming and listening. It has been a great conference, very great work, very interesting. Not really my central field, but too many things to think. Anyway, let's go with this. I will talk about beliefs from a different point of view. I come from a background where I study how opinions spread, and I'm particularly interested in evaluating opinions, if they are right, if they are wrong, and things like that. I'm not from a psychological point background. I'm actually a physicist, so my point of view is a bit different from most people here. I'm interested if an idea is right or likely to be correct, if it's a good description at least. So, no, yeah, okay. So I started worrying about beliefs, and the word belief, we can use it with different meanings. We can just be expressing a moral preference. I believe killing people is wrong. It's what I think, and I have a right to think that. I could be making an uncertain estimate. I could say, I believe it will rain tomorrow. I'm not sure, but it's probable. But people also use the word belief to mean that they know something. And that's what I want to explore here. When people say, I believe vaccines cause autism or any other thing, I believe gravity is real. It could be anything. They are saying that they have knowledge about that. They are not just saying that they say that in a stronger sense. If they say they believe in God, they think that God is real, and they actually think that's real knowledge. Okay, so moral beliefs are not a problem. We can, of course, ask for logical consistency. As Jer has just implied, sometimes there are conflicting beliefs, and the person can just in the beginning can have different some beliefs that do not work well with others. But in principle, it's my right to choose what I value more. Okay, on certain beliefs we have every day. We need to use the best evidence, and we need to reason. Sometimes you might say, "Oh, I'm fairly certain that," but that does not apply. But there is not logically wrong there. So, what I wanted to investigate then was, and that was over a huge set of disciplines. So please, if someone has any suggestions of things that I missed, things that I can learn, things that I can take more information from, please do send me. Is that, but beliefs as knowledge, they do need to be better addressed, if only because they can cause problems. Extremist behavior is associated to that, fake news, denial of sound science advice, scientific advice. All those things are related to people saying that they know something when they actually might not know that. So I went through a lot of different literature to see what we could be said about beliefs in this case. So, okay, so what's going? Okay. There's something wrong with. Sorry, not sure what's going on here. Can you still see my presentation? Yes, because when I'm presenting it as a full screen, it was not showing everything. So
I think it's fine like that. Thank you.
You can see me changing screens now?
Yes.
Great, because I was not something went wrong here, but we're back. So when you talk about beliefs as knowledge about the real world, knowledge is not a very well defined concept in philosophy. You have the suggestion that it could be justified through belief, something that I believe that is true and that I have justification to believe that. But that concept has problems. Your justification could be wrong, basically. There are also skeptical arguments that say that knowledge is not possible, things like brain in a vat, and we can dismiss that as improbable, as irrelevant, but that does not mean they are wrong. So they do conflict with the idea that I can absolutely know something about the world. Okay? Um, Uncertainty might be very small, but there is always a small amount of uncertainty that makes things not knowledge. Okay, and when you go to human cognition, as people here know much better than I do, people are not born logicians or statisticians. We make lots of reasoning biases, and from what I could gather, there are basically three main reasons we make mistakes when we estimate things. We use very good fast heuristics, but they are fallible. Sometimes the problem is not in human cognition, but in the fact that laboratory tests make assumptions about how the world is, and people are using heuristics that are efficient for the world, but not for the laboratory tests. Okay. And also, our reasoning, it did not really evolve to find correct answers. We are learning that we have motivated cognition. We, in the past, for our ancestors, except if it was a belief that would get you killed, if it was a minor, if it was not very influential in your sense of survival, belonging to your group might have been more important than actually being correct. Okay, so we tend to defend our ideas, even though from the point of view of being closer to being correct is not the best, it might be the best approach, but it might be very good for group belonging. So that means that we do need methods like statistics and mathematics and computation models to overcome those limitations, to tell us when we might be wrong. Okay, so from that, I started checking what logic and mathematics, and then I was more in my field, could tell us. Deductive logic, actually, you can prove things that things are true or false with certainty, but not about the word. It's always about an official word. If you assume some axioms or some premises, then you can be sure that something follows. But you have to assume something to start it. And how we know if that something is right, we do not. So unless you're making something that has a logical inconsistency, you cannot say that I know this is wrong. So, or it is trivial because it must be true maybe by definition. Okay, so deductive logic does not apply to the real world. What applies to the real world is what we call inductive logic. And this has been a problem since the beginning of logic. Aristotle knew that how we had to accept premises was problematic. More recently, we have been developing things towards probabilistic estimates, so we can talk about probabilistic induction. And you can, from a very simple set of assumptions of desiderata, Cox proposed that, it's in the book from James, but the initial idea is from Cox. Just if I want to represent plausibility as real number, it must correspond with common sense when we know that common sense is not going wrong. Common sense here is a very strong loaded word now. It was not when Cox proposed that. And it must be consistent. If I have more than one way to calculate it, I must get the same result. Just from that, you get probability theory. Okay? So but probability theory is problematic. We can get closer to uncertainty, but there is no justification for selecting ideas initially. We can go very close to certainty in some specific cases, but we do not get at certainty. And more than that, it requires infinite amount of resources to actually calculate things. If you wanted to really say, I have a final probability, I should consider all possible ideas, including those ones I do not know about from the beginning, and consider all possible theories about that, all possible explanations. This does suggest that we should do that in science as well as possible. But so always exploring new ideas, and that's how we actually do science. But it does mean that we are always subject to doing approximations. There are limits to inductive logic. So even in science, we should keep a healthy amount of mistrust, knowing that there is always a possibility that something new will come up. Most of us, several of us, 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Several of us know that, but we could probably learn that much better. I can certainly say from my point of view as a physicist that physicists take their theories far more serious than they should. There are mistakes in how people, how very good, the best theoreticians and physicists address their own theories. There are cognitive mistakes there. So beliefs actually are logically unsupported. If I say that, if I'm claiming that I know something, but if I'm claiming that I just think that this a decent description, they are not. That's fine. But when I make a claim of knowledge, they are unsupported from cognition, from logic, from philosophy. There is no. I found no support for that idea. Okay, so I did write a book on that. If anyone wants to see it, it's there. I'm doing some shameless ad here. Anyway, we need to consider all possible ideas. It's possible to rank ideas, but a lot of uncertainty remains in that. Okay. So the consequences is that we need to check all possible ideas. We should not get attached to ideas. Some things that we are always saying is not something very new in the, if you talk about. But here what I wanted to ask is that is the next step. What should we do? So we should doubt our beliefs. Okay. For doing that, we should do the basics, teach basic logical skills, teaching uncertainty. That's something we actually rarely see people saying, that we should teaching kids about being uncertain and about the possibility that other ideas might be right. We probably should change how we debate. When you teach children to debate, we ask them to take instances, to say, oh, you will defend that, we will defend that, when that's really not how we should address situations in the real world. Okay, so commitment to descriptions of the world is not supported. I would say wrong, but it's at least not supported. We do need to learn to distinguish moral values, but all of this points to ways that we could try to make a world better, but I really do not know what will work best. Okay, and that's a question for all of you that are listening, because I think that we need research in that. Sadly, I do not have a call for anyone, but I certainly would love testing how to avoid these kinds of beliefs, comments and suggestions, things I must learn, and that's about it. So thank you for listening. If anyone has questions or suggestions, here is my email. Okay, so you can write me or leave your questions in the Google Doc. I will check later. I think Rina just told me I have just 1 minute, so I better finish it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. We still have 1 minute, so if anyone wants to make a question, you can raise your hand, or you can also post in Google Doc. If nobody wants to raise a hand, I do have a question.
Please.
So I personally think that we should learn also to accept uncertainty and how to deal with uncertainty. And that's one of my main things. Like, I personally hate uncertainty and I don't deal well with it. So yeah, what do you think about it?
From a personal point of view, how you could oh, that's a great question. I'm not really sure how to answer that. It's not really my field to give personal advice to people.
Yeah,
what
like
I can say is that well, you should. There are things in the literature that could help you, like making an effort to consider why you believe those things, checking the details of your beliefs, asking yourself, if white people with different beliefs might believe the way they do. So checking the details of your beliefs, not just if you just say, I believe the earth is flat, but making a joke, not sure your, but if you want to change that, just saying that there are people who disagree will not help you, of course. But if you ask why I think that, in which ways I could be wrong, if you force yourself to do that, and there are more details, and I know I've read about those details, but there are many. There are I can check my. I need to check the sources better, because there are things that work well and there are other approaches that fail at making people think differently. Okay.
Okay.
I have a limited space in my brain, so some of those things I keep in the files I have. I can, but the exactly details do not come to mind now. There are certainly people who know that much better than I do. But
That's
challenging
fine.
yourself is how I want to start.